So Paul is being clear. Christ is not divided. Leaders are not saviors, and our allegiance belongs to Jesus alone. Leaders are gifts to the church, but Jesus is the foundation, and he never fails. But leaders are not perfect. Now, let's talk about what this means for us today in 2025. Because the reality is, it's normal to have preferences. It's normal to be like, well, Dave is a little bit better preacher than Jared. He has decades more experience than me. So, the preferences are normal. Like, dogs are better than cats. The Chiefs are the best football team in the league. Oh, those are facts. I'm sorry. We're talking about preferences here. But Paul doesn't deny that Apollos was more polished or that Peter had his own authority. He doesn't deny any of that. Paul doesn't deny that he himself has a unique role as their founding pastor. All of those things are true. Paul doesn't even say, hey, you know what? You should like us all equally. He doesn't even say that. He simply says, don't let those preferences divide you. Don't let those preferences divide you. And it's the same thing for us as well. As we mentioned, some of you may prefer my teaching style. Some of you really connect with Dave's messages, and that's normal. That's okay. That's human. We all have different voices that resonate with us. Like, man, that guy understands where I am in life. And so it's normal to resonate with one person more than another. So preference is fine, but division is not. The problem is when preference becomes allegiance. Corinth crossed the line when their preferences turned into camps. And it's one thing to be like, oh, I like that guy's preaching better. But it's another thing to be like, no, I only follow Paul. Well, I only follow Apollos. Paul is not as good as Apollos. So I'm allegiant to him and no one else. And that's when it starts falling apart. And for us, it may be, well, I only come when my favorite preacher is speaking. That undermines the unity of our church. When we say, well, he's not as good as the guy that I listen to online, so I'll come to church, but I'll just kind of check out how the games are going during service. I'm not going to listen to the sermon much because I like this other preacher better. Like that weakens the body. When our faith rises or falls based on who's on the stage preaching, we've shifted our allegiance away from Jesus and we've tethered it to a personality. And that's not healthy. That's not right. That's not what the church was meant to be. The church was never meant to be built on a personality, not on Paul, not on Apollos, not on Jared, not on anyone other than Jesus. So here's your challenge. If you don't get anything else this morning, I want you to wrestle with this question or this idea that can you be engaged enough with the church so that whoever's leading the church isn't the primary reason that you belong to that church? Can you be engaged to the level that whoever's in charge isn't the primary factor as to why you're at that church? I've seen churches change pastors for one reason or another, oftentimes healthy reasons. And when a pastor leaves, then I see groups of people leave as well. Even if the pastor retires, it's not like they're going to another church and so you just follow him. He retires. And then people just leave that church because like, well, it's not what it used to be anymore or something. And, he's a good teacher, or so I just want to find another good Bible teacher, or whatever it is. Going to another church won't solve it because hopefully you have relationships here that you've built up, that you've invested in. And so even if the pastor's gone, you have people here. But so often that's not actually the case. People don't engage with their church enough that they have relationships that hold them down. So often, if you merely attend just on Sundays, then your primary, maybe only connection with church is me. And if that's the case, if I leave, I'm not leaving, so there's nothing secret here, but I'm not leaving. But if I do leave, there's so many people that may be like, well, I have no reason to stay because he was the only reason I was here. And I don't want that for you. Don't make it about me. I'm not that awesome. The more you get to know me, the more you're going to be like, man, he's kind of boring. I'm a boring person. I'm not perfect. I don't always keep my temper and stuff. I am not perfect. And so I will let you down at some point or another. And so don't make it all about me. It's not healthy. That's not how God has called us to live. So I want to challenge you to engage with Lake Tapps Christian Church to the point that your primary attachment isn't to me, but to Jesus and to this community of people. So that if I were ever to leave, it may just be like, well, that's a bummer. I wonder who the next pastor is. Not, oh, well, he's leaving. Are we going to stay or do we go? I want you to be engaged and connected with the people of this church, and that is why you're here. So to be clear, I have no plans on leaving anytime soon, but I just want I want you to build your life around the right things. Now, in the end, Paul's not just telling the Corinthians what not to do. He's not just like, hey, stop it, stop being divided over things. He's calling them back to the one that they should have been following all along, to follow Jesus. Because Jesus is the one who was crucified for you. He's the one who was raised for you. He's the one who pours out his Spirit on you. He is the true King. Leaders will come and go, styles will change, preferences will shift, but Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He is faithful. He is enough. Now, I want to pause here real quick because there's an important clarification to make. Because when Paul says our allegiance is to Christ, he's not saying that leaders don't matter at all. Remember, one of the factions in Corinth was those saying, well, I follow Christ, forget leaders. And at first glance, that sounds right, but Paul puts them in the same category with all the others, saying, no, that's not right. Because as we see in chapter 3, Paul's saying leaders are a gift to the church. They help the church. They have a role, so don't just forget about them. I lost my place. So the Corinthian church, they weren't following Jesus in humility. Those that were saying, oh, forget all that, Christ only. They weren't following Jesus in humility. They were using Jesus as an excuse to dismiss leaders and community and accountability. So Paul's vision, and if you read the Gospels, it's Jesus' vision for his followers, is that it's not just me and Jesus. It's a personal faith or something. The vision is that Jesus is at the center and there's leaders and community in their proper place. There is a place for leaders. There is a place for community. And so we're part of this historical tradition throughout the centuries of the historical church. We should be a part of a community with that is organized and not just doing our own thing on our own. So to kind of wrap all this up, what does it look like then to actually follow Jesus through the lens of this when it comes to our involvement and engagement with church and community? What does Paul want us to do? So it means our ultimate allegiance is to Jesus, not to a personality, not to a tradition. The church can change how it does things without you losing your faith or needing to leave. And so then the second thing, it means we receive pastors and leaders as gifts, not as foundations. So pastors, leaders, we plant, we water, but God makes things grow. It's not about us. We're not perfect, so don't be disappointed when you find out our imperfections. And then the third thing, it means that we stay committed to the body, which is the people of the church. Even when our favorite voice isn't on stage, even if we're not singing the songs that you love or something, because your faith and your commitment and your allegiance isn't tethered to style, but to Christ and his church. So following Jesus faithfully will always include being rooted in his community and learning from the leaders that he places in our lives, but we follow them as they follow Christ. So if I'm not following Jesus, don't follow me, okay? So as the worship team comes up, I just want to ask you plainly, like, who are you following? Who are you following? Is your faith tethered and attached to a pastor, me or someone else? Or is your faith attached to the risen King? Is your deepest connection to a personality or a tradition or the past, or is it to Jesus and his community? Why do you come to Lake Tapps Christian Church? How do you answer that question?